Five, four, three, two, one.
Good afternoon. This is Jim Eskin on behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 46th webinar in our series. This one has the title Managing Up to Raise More Money, and we're going to settle that age-old debate of who is right, you or your boss, okay? We're going to get in. I'd like to introduce, first of all, this is the first time we've had a trifecta. We actually have three subject matter experts. Barbara A.F. Greene is the founder and the CEO of Barbara Greene and Associates, and is nationally recognized for leadership and executive coaching. Barbara, I have to ask you, share with the audience what AF stands for.
Okay, my clients tell me that the A stands for accessible and the F stands for flexible.
What did your parents tell you when they stuck that in your name?
They actually didn't stick it in the name. It was part of my getting married, stick in the name process.
Okay. What we'll do for love. And I'm going to introduce them as a duo. I've turned to two of my colleagues that have been educators and mentors to me. And it would take forever if I was to go through their CVs. And by the way, happy St. Patrick's Day. So I guess it's Barbara O. Greene that's wearing green. And I'd like to introduce Mike O. Davis and Richard O. Ortega. We've collectively, between the three of us, we have 100 years in the fundraising profession. Okay, we've had 23 different employers, and we have received a total of 23 reprimands. So, Barbara, I'd like to start with you. Barbara?
Yes.
We are dedicating this webinar to honor the memory of a very cherished mutual friend, Dr. Deb Morgan, who passed away in 2018. Can you share with our audience how Deb's example inspired you in your life and career?
It was one moment after another, Jim. So it could be a dissertation. I'll keep it as brief as possible. Deb and I first met over 30 years ago when I first moved to San Antonio, and she was also new to San Antonio. It was interesting how we became fast friends because we found out and discovered that we were competing for the same jobs because our backgrounds were very similar. And from that point on, we became very, and I don't use the word friend, I use it very carefully, let's put it that way. And Deb was truly a genuine friend. So that in itself made a difference in my life's work. She put fun into everything she did. She was there supporting me in many, many different ways. And it wasn't just me. What I saw in her was being able to support people that others may not have thought about supporting.
And I got to tell you, I was lucky enough to be one of her colleagues too at the Alamo colleges. And I just wanted to add, I had a phone call from Deb early in October 2018. And I don't say this for dramatic effect, but we knew this was going to be our final conversation. And she said, Jim, I want to run something by you. She said, I've always wanted to encourage philanthropy in my life. What would you think? We're going to have two celebrations of my life, one in Minneapolis where I was born, and the other in Northwest Vista College was the professional love of her life. And what we're going to do, we're going to hand out a $100 bill to everybody. Not every couple. Andrea and I went, we each got $100, okay? Everyone, and with a short note that would say, we hope you will share this with your favorite nonprofit or charity, and we hope you'll consider adding to that. And let me tell you, I think it was 150 people were at the celebration in Minneapolis. About 225 people were at the celebration in Northwest College Vista. I can tell you a lot more happened without most people added quite substantially. And I got to tell you, of being part of this 100-year group, I've never heard an example of philanthropy like that. It was just awe-inspiring.
$100 per person. Total that up as a gift to our world from Deb Morgan and her thoughtfulness in bringing you into it, Jim. I remember us both being on that stage at Northwest Vista talking about the impact of her in our lives.
Hey,
It's
Barbara.
special.
Yes. You've been in the executive coaching business for 25 years.
Yes.
I dare say there are a lot of our attendees that doesn't know what an executive coach does. You do. Can you tell us what an executive coach does? And I think a lot of people think it's only something that very high paid CEOs from the large corporations can afford to use.
Actually, executive coaching is everywhere. One of the things we know today is that it's really wisdom from other people that helps people be as successful as they possibly can be as an executive. Companies, nonprofits are utilizing executive coaches. And yes, what that means is that you are working with the CEO or the C-level suite along with the board chairs when we're working with nonprofit organizations to really partner with them to be even better than they thought they could be all by themselves. And so it's really helping successful people be even better. And in return, you're getting results. And executive coaching comes in different ways. Some of it is we love to go in and do work with people who are starting a new CEO level job and work with their board so that you have executive onboarding, because that first 90 days is critical. That executive onboarding, because how you bring in that new CEO permeates through the entire culture of the organization. That is really paramount. And then the other is our world is in a complexity of change right now on steroids, right, Jim? On
And
steroids.
now on double steroid squared. Hey,
Yeah.
listen, let me ask you, let's cut to the trace. What is managing up? What is it and what isn't it?
Well, managing up is not about saying yes every time you turn around to your boss. Okay. Managing up is about having productive relationships with your boss so that you are doing the best that you can in your own self, in your own role, as well as helping your boss be the best boss, as well as helping the organization have the kind of results that you need to have.
Thank you. And we'll be getting back into our two fundraisers, but I want to take advantage. I'm really excited about next week's webinar is going to be on the subject of celebrities and nonprofits. And it just so happens our special guest from the fundraising world, Mike Davis, he and his son have collectively won 5 Olympic medals, 3 gold and 2 silver. Mike, can we tell us something about this Josh Davis who's going to be our guest next week?
Well, he's my eldest son, and he started out in swimming here in San Antonio in our neighborhood pool, and all of a sudden he became the Northeast kind of pool champion for subdivisions, and then he went off to Churchill High School and
did he pick up swimming from you? Were you a big swimmer?
No, I was a flotation device. Jim, thanks for asking, though. But no, but that we had 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl, and we had to keep them busy all the time. And that was what's great about the summer was the swimming programs, and so they lived in the pool and the water and the little club we belonged to, and they made it. It was a great place to grow up. It was a wonderful opportunity, and from there, after Churchill, he was recruited by the University of Texas, and he swam for Texas, and then he won an NC2A championship at the Nationals. So after that,
so tune in next week, and he's a much in demand motivational speaker. He's been a network sportscaster, and he has 6 kids, so I think he's multitasking. Before we get to our Q&A, I want to take a moment to tell our nonprofit friends, you should not slow down. Right now, you should be stepping up all your fundraising efforts, because this is what we know of the past year. First of all, Nothing predicts philanthropy like the stock market. And as we know, this, I think the Dow went up and NASDAQ went down, but they're at record levels. We finally have seen numbers from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. And guess what? Total giving in 2020 was up about 11% over 2019. And guess what? The biggest increase was in the space of small to modest donors of $250 to $500. So the American people really came through. And we call Mackenzie Scott our Wonder Woman. We have a deal. Anytime Michael Argent, she wants to come on, I will give her the mic. By the way, I mean, we had a new $1 billion gift today from a guy named Bill Ackman, who probably none of you have heard of. He runs the South Korean version of Amazon, and he committed $1 billion gift. It's an exciting time in philanthropy. At that point, Michael Argent, can you tell, who's our producer from Game Day Media, can you explain to our learning community partners how they can either type a question in the chat space or better yet, come on camera?
Sure. So it's pretty simple. If you guys have any questions while you're watching, there's a little chat box. You can type them in there. But once we're done with the slides, so right now I've just turned everybody's camera off just for the time being. But once we're done with the slides, Jim's gonna turn off the slides, and then if you want, you can turn your camera back on, and then kind of raise your hand, get the speaker's attention, and then ask a question that way. So those are your two options.
We rather see you. And by the way, Barb, I think I'm going to change around an order. I'm going to have one more question from you. This graphic tells it. Most nonprofits, there are 1.5 million nonprofits in the country. There are 100,000 in Texas, and there are 6,000 in San Antonio alone. 88% of those have budgets under $500,000. And so can small nonprofits like that get executive coaching?
Think about if they don't have executive coaching, what happens? And yes, they can get it. And there's a lot of different foundations out there that are now providing that support when people can apply for grants. The other thing that people can reach out to me about is I'm a part of a volunteer corps of global Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder-centered coaches. And we are volunteers.
He is the greatest executive coach that ever lived, right?
That's right. He's one of the top, for sure. One of the top
I
5.
call him the Tom Brady. He's the GOAT.
He definitely is. So we have a philanthropic approach to utilizing the Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder-centered coaching for 501c3s worldwide, not just in San Antonio, worldwide.
Wow. By the way, at this point, we ask everyone, this is a tradition we have, type in your chat space the 3 words nonprofit strong. Barbara, what are we?
We're nonprofit strong?
You bet. Richard Ortega, what are we?
Nonprofit strong.
You better believe it. Dressed in green, Mike O'Davis, what are we?
Nonprofit strong, my man.
You are, and we're going to get nonprofit stronger. Tell you what, let us go, let's see, to the, I should stop sharing, Michael Largent, or if we, do I need?
Yeah, if you're so if you're ready to move on to questions, or if you're just done with your slides.
No,
you can
I
turn
want to
those
do the
off.
Q&A. It's going to be 20 minutes of Q&A between I and the subject matter experts.
Gotcha.
So if I hit stop share, it'll just be the 4 of us?
Yes. Perfect.
Really? Okay. I see some here. Okay, folks, we ready for a lively Q&A?
Amen.
And so
Amen.
now everybody in the audience, if you, I turned your cameras off. So if you want to turn them back on, this would be the time to do it.
Hey, we can see who's there. I see a lot of our good friends, and we expect questions from them. So I want to go to the nonprofits, to my fellow fundraisers. I think one, and by the way, a lot of these questions, hi Dennis, a lot of these questions are nightmares that we lived. This goes to Mike and Richard right off the bat. During your long and illustrious careers, what did you do when your top donor couldn't stand the CEO?
Boy,
tell you
But-
what, age before beauty, let's let Richard Tager. And by the way, what's the weather like in Helena?
55 degrees, t-shirt weather.
Sounds pretty good. Okay, how did you handle, you have a top donor, and guess what? He cannot stand your CEO.
So I did a centennial campaign for a college, and the sentiment that I can't stand the president was quite common among our major donors. Okay, he
Yeah.
was, I wouldn't say universally disliked, but let's say he was disliked. And so so I had to have the conversation with donors, and they would say, I'm not going to give any gifts. I don't like the president. And the way I handled it was the donors had this long relationship with the college, some of them over 50 years.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
And so they've been supporters of the college in the past, and they care very much about the mission of the college. But presidents come and go.
Mhm.
But we're in our first comprehensive campaign. It's a centennial campaign. Now's not the time to withdraw from supporting the college. This is not time of it. And actually, that argument was very good. It proved out to be very successful.
Mm.
People would say, yep, you're right, Richard. I've been involved with college for a long time. May not like this president, but now's the time to continue to support it.
Right. Hey, Mike, this is your turn. What did you do during your career when your top donor could not stand the CEO? By the way, we're omitting names to protect the innocent and the guilty.
Well, what I've done in the past, because it's always interesting, all of us who are in this business have to be good listeners, and you got to be able to pick up a few signals. And so when in talking to trustees or who are donors or donors themselves, and they kind of say those things, well, basically what I do is just kind of lead them away from the CEO and thinking about him, and really concentrate on the mission of the institution I work for. And mine was for church, faith affiliated schools, the medical cancer center, and higher education. And those are relatively easy things to sell, and you can kind of talk about the mission of that institution, what it does. You talked about the 1,000 students that come out of the place, and they're going to take over society, and not worry about the CEO, because you're going to give to a scholarship, or you're giving into the growth of our community center. So you basically got to be kind of a PR guy and kind of talk around it a lot. That was the way I did it. Now,
And that's good. Okay, this next question is for all three of our experts, and we'll start with Barbara. One of the biggest complaints of chief development officers, sometimes chiefs, sometimes they're vice presidents, sometimes they're vice chancellors, whatever. They're the person in charge of resource development, is not having enough access to the CEO. With everyone so busy these days, how do you coach a CEO to give adequate time to all their direct reports? And then I want to hear from Richard and Mike. I'll start with you, Barbara.
So how to coach the CEO to have adequate time with their director?
No. The CEO is giving it out. Okay, I think. How did you coach the CEO to make sure they were giving adequate time to their chief development officer and their other direct reports?
Well, it varies obviously for each person as to what they have on their plate. So each week, typically, we're looking at least a 15-minute huddle for the staff, and then a 15-minute conversation. It's all be brief, be brilliant, be gone. If the CEO and have the CEO actually communicate with their team about how they want to be communicated with.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then the development professional needs to ask, what's the best way to communicate with you, and so that I can convey, and you don't read it in the newspaper before before the newspaper.
And by the way, Bob, I'm going to come back to you in a moment about the method of communication. Now, I want to talk to my two fellow fundraisers. How did you try to get adequate time from the person who never had enough time? the president or the chancellor or the kubar or the czar, whoever you were reporting to? Start with Richard.
So I always try to make sure we had regularly scheduled meetings and that I was in charge of the agenda. So that
I like
way
that. Hey, repeat that. I love that.
that I was in charge of the agenda. Now I would send it to the president ahead of time and they could add and adjust and stuff like that. But that's the way the president knew what was the topics of discussion that were going on there. And so as you did, it had to be important, had to really move it forward. We're not going to waste the person's time at all. So that was it. And the key part of the meetings is what in these projects do I need the president to be engaged in? And how do we make sure it's scheduled to happen? Whether it's visits, a consultation, a phone call, whatever it is, but it gets on the president's agenda from this meeting. Okay, we have that. And then I want to make sure I have a relationship that with the president's staff, that if I need to talk to the president really quick because it's urgent, that it happens.
Yeah.
Maybe not immediate, but before the end of the day, that I really need to have this type of interchange.
You want to know, and I love the way you frame it, end of the day, by the end of the day. You don't like to go to sleep on those things. Mike Davis, you really don't. I got to tell you, come on, our hair is gray, not by accident. Mike Davis, how did you ensure you got adequate time from the big guy or the big lady?
Well, since I had such a checkered career, Jim, I really did it like Jim. I concur and second what Richard had to say how to set things up, because I didn't have it weekly, but every other week I had a morning session with the CEO, and I also came out with the decisions and then indicated people or things that should have been at the top of the level for us to concentrate on, for cultivation, for letters, et cetera, et cetera. And on the other hand, I had two presidents that were always in my office. Since
I had the same two presidents.
Yeah,
Giving
they were always. I was kind of one of the things you have to learn out when you're a development officer. You're kind of a confessor. People come in there, trustees, presidents, deans. They come in there. They got it because they know that you're gonna be pretty much be confidential about everything, because that's a number one thing you have to be, is you have to have the confidence of everybody else. And so they come in and unload on you. They talk about that sorry so-and-so, and so, but I concur with Richard. He's got the best methodology.
Okay. Use it. I hear a lot of development officers use it. Barbara, I want to go to you this question. What have you noticed about managing up being similar and different in the virtual communication environment?
We definitely are working harder in the virtual environment because we don't have the drive-bys, Jim. So that importance of communication is critical in many different ways. The other piece to this is visibility. One of the things that I know that some of us are, let's say, hesitant to do is to show our face on virtual. It's really important that you're showing your face, because it definitely lets the other person know that you're engaged and you're present. Otherwise, it's like, well, what are they doing?
Hey, Bob, that is so important. I would like to ask you to repeat that.
The visibility and show your face. Like in San Antonio, Jim, we talk about show your shoes. Fiesta. So now it's going to be show your face or show your mug. Like this mug I have right here is all full of hearts for Valentine's Day. So you've got to be able to show that there's something live going on when you're virtual, because we're not right there.
Barbara, I'm having a fun time picking on you, so I'm going to continue this. Does it take any type of ego swallowing to accept to be managed up?
Yes. In fact, yes. Ego, major ego swallowing. It's about being, one of the gifts I believe that fundraisers do extremely well is be they focused.
Yeah.
when you're they focused, you're really listening to understand what the other person is saying. It's just like what Mike and Richard was anticipating. He was taking the initiative. He wasn't putting more work on the president to get ready for the meeting. And the same idea with Mike and what he was talking about. So you've got to be able to put your ego aside so that you're willing to listen to the other person's point of view.
Right. I want to go back to our two fundraisers. I'd like to start with Mike O. Davis. And this is the issue when you were managing up your president, your chair of the foundation, whatever. What were the top priorities? What did you want them to understand?
Well, the top priorities for me was basically, it was the mission of the institution. And, and that was, you kind of encourage them and the faculty or the administration to have kind of a mission statement, because that's kind of the selling document that you're going to take out, and that's the one you got to promote around. And then the second thing is that they make themselves available, and in some ways the development officer has to with some CEOs, you have to train them. And so you have to tell them, all right, this is what we're making this call. This is what we're going to sell. And you exactly have 20 minutes to do it. Because once that executive secretary comes into the office, the meeting is over. And so you have to plan the whole thing out for them, and then you run through them and keep them on cue.
Let's skip over to Richard. What were your top priorities in getting the big cheese to understand?
Well, I had to really get trained CEOs to listen and to be donor centric. They would come in and
that
start
ain't
selling.
easy, is it? That ain't easy, by the way.
That is not easy, because they're used to espousing their faculty members in front of the class. They got to fill the time, and it's opposed to being what the donors interested, what they feel about, how's their family and kids, so listening and being donor centric, I think is key, what I want to do. And then to make sure that they understand that this is a process and it does not begin with solicitation. Sometimes CEOs just want to go directly, let's go visit and ask for money. I said, no, this is get to know you, feel comfortable. Let me hear what you're concerned about meeting. We'll get to ask plenty of time. Let's really hear what they're interested in. Because maybe what you think they're interested, they don't care. They may not give a damn about. And that has happened many times. You come in there and I see the president tried to sell something and the person say, I'm not interested in that. And then what do you have left? That's when you got to start listening. So I tell CEOs, if you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. So
I love that. And the Laura Fredericks, one of our great fundraising gurus, said any donor meeting, the donor should be speaking 75% of the time, and the solicitor team 25% of the time. Hey, correct. I got a question for all three of you, okay? And pardon my direct language. How do you pull off a managing up culture in a environment that I'm going to describe as suck up? And that's where everyone is telling the CEO that he or she is perfect. That's such an easy question. We'll start with Barbara.
Get out of that culture. I would say, how do you survive in a culture like that everybody's doing that? So it's tough. First off, think about your own reputation. What do you want to, what's your brand? What do you want to be known for? As a person who's going to say what Jim just said, the SU, yes, all the time, or someone who has the conviction to say what's really best for the donors, what's best for the people that you're serving. And it's a talk you need to have with yourself.
Hey, Barbara, let's, I'll tell you what, this is fun. Can we go to Mike O. Davis and then Richard Ortega. How did you work? And I got to tell you, I think I saw a lot of it in education, but swim in a suck up culture where the emperor's told he's not told he's not wearing no clothes.
Are you starting with me?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of when you know, I worked for a major good sized state university,
Yeah.
and they wanted to do you know, an employee appeal you know, throughout the university, because when this was a state school and everybody thought it was state supported, but they're only really now state affiliated. You know, they have the taxpayer doesn't pay that big portion anymore. And what I had to do is I had to put together a plan for the institutional employee campaign. And so I asked the president about it, but I didn't want to get all those deans and everybody else involved. And I just went to the president and said, we're going to do this. And, but I want the football coach to lead up the campaign. And we had just hired him from some big school. And then I said, you haven't played a football game. We're going to do this appeal before football season, because halfway through, you may not win a game and we're going to die in this thing. But the deal is, I just avoided all those other people. And, you know, you hit the business dean and say, can we come and meet your faculty? Because I know you have a meeting on such and such a date. And I'm bringing the football coach. Well, they all, you know, you gotta, you know, the guy's brand new. You got to kind of genuflect to him for a while.
Well put. Richard, would you like to chime in?
I would. So term that's used is truth to power. But I find very people actually will tell truth to power. But let me give an example where I did. And so on the campaign, we're getting close to reaching the campaign goal. So the CEO wants to ask a former board member for a gift that would put us over the goal. I suggest that the CEO is not the right person to make this ask. That the best person is another VP who is the classmate of this individual. And that would be the most important, appropriate person to make the ask. Well, the CEO states, well, you know, I'm the CEO and this person was a former board member, so I'm the right person to make this ask. And I tried very gently to persuade him that, no, he's not the right person, that this, if we're gonna be successful, this other person. And he was insisting, I'm the person to make this ask. And so I said, okay, this donor hates you. He told me he's never, ever gonna give to you. If we have any possibility of getting the gift that's going from him to go over the goal, then it has to be this other VP that makes this ask. Well, there's a long period of awkward silence. But he relented. The VP successfully made the ask, and it was the gift that made us over the goal.
Yeah.
Now, it might have been tough.
The word hate doesn't have a lot of nuance to it. You kind of understand it.
Hate?
No, you said with the donor hates you. You know, there's no room.
Oh, it was straight. It was pretty straight. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be around the bush anymore. I've tried it. Now, you know, if you want to be successful, reach the goal, it's not you.
Yeah. Hey, Barbara, this is kind of a related issue. It's so essential for chief development officers, other direct reports to get good, accurate information from the top. And of course, there's always room for misunderstanding and misinterpretation. What do you suggest a CEO do when he has a reputation for just consistently doing a poor job of passing vital information on?
Well, get a coach for one thing.
Okay. Can you name one?
Yeah, it's really important to be able to have someone, for that CEO to have a person that they can talk with before they have to deliver any message. And sometimes your PR firm does that. Sometimes that's the development person doing that. Yet, if this is a consistent challenge, truly it's a behavior that needs, you know, the CEO's probably worked hard to be this way for umpteen years, quite frankly. And for them to change overnight, it's pretty tough without intentional coaching, truly intentional coaching, and also to show the results what would happen when he or she changes that behavior? What impact does it have for the organization to be better?
Thank you. I'm going to go to the fundraisers. Hey, do we have CEOs in the audience? Because I think you're going to like this question. And we're going to start with Richard and then we'll go to Mike, okay? Let's face it, not all fundraisers are perfect and not all CEOs are imperfect. Can you cite an example in which the CEO kind of corrected your path with a donor strategy?
Uh,
Who do you want to go?
I'll start with Richard and then we'll go to Mike.
So my answer is no.
Hey, you want me to repeat the question? Did you understand the question?
No, I understand the question. Did a CEO ever get
Yeah.
me to change my mind or do something and end it in a larger gift? And the answer, I did not have that experience. I wish I did.
Okay. Mike Davis, who was in the profession, can I share something close to 50 years? Can you cite an example in which the CEO corrected the path to a donor gift?
Yeah, it would, well, I mean, other dynamics worked into the case, but when I worked for the Cancer Therapy and Research Center, we had an appointment was been made with one of the big corporations here in San Antonio that is no longer here. And we had prepared the proposal for it, and the president was going to go and make the ask. And he came to me and he says, you know, this guy is a hunter, and we have about 4 or 5 hunters on our board.
Sounds like Texas.
That's Texas. And so
Yeah.
call them up and see if they will, you know, go to the meeting with me. You know, and these are all pretty prominent dudes. And so I made the call, and they all loved it because I had to drive everybody down there, and they all went in for the meeting, and they talked hunting for 15 minutes and cancer 5 minutes, and they walked out with the biggest gift we ever got. And all I was doing is driving around Houston Street, you know. And
whatever works. Hey, let's stick with the 2 fundraisers, and we'll start with Richard and then go to Mike. Can you give an example of how you handled a CEO who was pushing you to ask for too large of a gift way too early with a donor?
Yes, I can give examples of that. So again, in the campaign, the president had a dollar mine for the individual that didn't make any sense, you know, either capacity or gifts anyplace else, or gifts to us, or even a history. But the person had a reputation that was very, very wealthy, but was not philanthropic that we could tell, or, you know, so forth. But he was pretty much insisting that, you know, this is the amount we got to ask for, and we're going to go for it. We're going to do it.
Hey, Michael Largent, do we have any questions? I have plenty more questions, but I'd like to engage the audience. Is anyone in the audience either want to type in a question? Better yet, let us see you, okay? So we'd like to invite questions from the audience.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any in the chat so far, but like Jim said, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask, go ahead and turn your camera on, turn your mic on, and we'll take those now.
Okay, hey, Barbara, this one is, I think this is a tougher question. That's why I'm going to ask you, okay? Let's face it, this last year was like none other in our collective lifetimes. And the truth is, we came closer to the fear of death with the reality of social distancing and dependence on virtual communications than we ever dreamt could happen in our worlds. What did this do? You know, you teach team building. What did that mean to team building?
It means that we had to use some different muscles, Jim. Just
Yeah.
like a swimmer, Mike, you could probably talk about that. You know, when one muscle goes out, you got to move the other muscle to make it stronger, or use the strengths that you have. The teamship is definitely much more intentional, and it really takes trust. Jim, that's the big thing right now is people really trying to figure out, can I really trust my team members? And they've been trying to figure that out for the last year. Some companies said, I trust always.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but but I do it really well. I'm thinking building trust is more challenging and maintaining trust in a virtual environment than a person to person. Could you comment a little?
Yes, because you can't see what they're doing, right? Yeah, you're not right next door to them, and you're not going down to have a cup of coffee down the hallway. So what you can see though is at the end of the day, what's the results of what they're doing? How they're doing it, you really can't be involved in as much. So the trust has to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
If the proof is in the results.
Yes. Okay, Barbara, another easy one for you. What do you say?
Okay.
How in your coaching career did you deal with the CEO who insisted he or she knew everything about everything all the time?
You know, here we go. It's this book. It's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. 20 behaviors that get in the way. And one of them is exactly what you just said, Jim. And if they really want to change their behavior to make the influence happen, that's where they got to have some self-talk for sure. It's really stopping them in the track, you know, to think about what makes them be the know-it-all versus the learn-it-all. Instead of the know-it-all, be the learn-it-all.
I love that. Can I steal that? I love
Yes,
that.
you can. I probably stole it from somebody else, Jim. So think about that as we're in a, you know, we're all right here together. We're on this because we want to keep growing and we want to keep learning.
I want to go back to our fundraisers. We'll start with Mike and then go to Richard. Can you cite some examples from your career in which there was a CEO turnaround? You had a CEO that really wasn't listening to you, wasn't following, you know, your expertise, but turned around.
Richard, take that because I got to think about it for a minute.
Okay, Richard, you're first.
All right. So
Turnaround.
at a college, I was brought in to do the Centennial campaign. The president had gone through 3 VPs of advancement in the previous 5 years. Okay.
Oh, gee.
Do not have a history that he was.
By the way, that tells you everything.
Well, I could tell a lot of stories about it, but I got the job and I realized it didn't look like a very good. He was not a good listener. He was in the stuck up mentality and stuff like that. So I would give him suggestions and, you know, I didn't know anything, right? Even though they did hire me. Yeah. So my strategy was to take him and the head of the development committee to a case conference for presidents and head of the boards on fundraising. You know, securing the gift of a lifetime was the title of it, right? You know, and I convinced them to go is because the presenters were from Stanford and Yale and stuff like that, and there's gonna be other presidents there and so forth, and it was really good for a president who's going to start a campaign, and so it actually worked out pretty good. So at the end of the workshop, and it was a 3-day workshop, he stated, boy, now I know what I was doing wrong in fundraising. And the key thing is that all of a sudden I became so much smarter because I was telling all the things that they said at the workshop, but it wasn't going to listen to me. But from someone from Stanford says it, yes, it works.
By the way, folks, we're going to go to the wrap-up section. So, Michael, I'm going to go back. I want to show some slides. So, share, and let's see. And having some slide movement. Okay. Managing up, Barbara. We're just going to hit some key points. By the way, if anyone's got a question, they can chime in. But this is going to be, we believe in the formula. We're going to tell you what we're going to tell you, we're going to tell you, and then we're going to tell you what we told you. And managing up goes both ways, Barbara. Is that correct?
Absolutely you do. It's actually a whole 360 approach. Managing up, though, is about really being that productive relationships to get the best for the organization.
And by the way, bosses aren't always right and they always aren't wrong. Talk a little about that.
For sure. It being, everybody sees things differently, right? That perspective. One of the techniques that I would like to share, Jim, is that when you first start off with a new boss or you're in a new company, is really understand what the rules of the game are that aren't said. It's the hidden messages, and understand what those protocols are.
Can you dig a little deeper? What does that mean?
Well, it's what's not being said that's important. So for example, is don't skip over me to go to somebody else to get your way, because that's going to be death, right? Yeah. The other piece is that in some cultures of an organization, it is about go talk to the CEO. If you're not talking to the CEO, just let me know, your director, your boss, but I want you talking to the CEO. You don't have to ask me for permission. But understand what the rules of those those protocols are, what the unwritten rules are, and they're going to be different in every organization. That's why going to coffee or having lunch and being able to be in places where you can have those conversations spontaneously, it helps. And yes, remote ways, we've got to do it more intentionally.
Hey, one of the key components of managing up, the difference between a manager and a leader knows how to put their ego in check.
Right.
Can you expand a little more on that?
Right. Well, I think one of the words that has been used here over and over is the word listening. When the person puts their ego to the side, they are truly listening to what the other person has to say. And when they hear that, then they can really be very, very, make the other person feel like they're the only person in the room and feel good about it.
Hey, I want to ask all three of you, when we talk about chemistry and team building between the chief development officer and the CEO, I imagine I've had that, and I know that Richard and Mike have had that perspective. It can be like either it's the first year for the CEO, it's the first year for you, but when you've had the luxury of working together for 5, 7, 10 years, Barbara, can you talk about, it's a whole different window, isn't it?
It absolutely is, because you really, the trust is there for one thing, okay? And the other piece of it is you come out a united front. I think that's another aspect of what you should do. And I believe Richard and Mike have indicated that over the conversation is making sure that you're having those conversations. So when you walk out of the room together, you are united, but not everybody needs to know that you had a few fussing and fightings going on in the conference room before you got to being united.
I'm imagining going back to the new virtual environment. It actually takes more, not less communication or intentional communication between the supervisor and the employee, because there's no kind of walking into each other at the water cooler. And
yes, absolutely. And you need to really ask each other what they prefer. For me, I'm not going to have a dissertation on text. Not going to happen. So pick up the phone and call. Just pick up the phone and call, and we get our relationship even stronger.
Okay, I'm going to go back to our fundraisers. I'll start with Richard and go to Mike. And remember, there's anonymity here, okay? No names or anything. How many CEOs did you have that really liked asking for the gift? Start with Richard.
So I've had one.
Gee, well, at least you had one. How about you?
I had three that of the group that I worked with. They didn't have any problem. But you had to lay out the plan in front of them, and say, you don't talk about this and you don't talk about that, and you can say this, and because people are very sensitive, and if you say the wrong thing, man, you kill the deal. But I want to add one thing that when Barbara was talking about there, I worked at a small hospital in Louisiana. And the person who was really because we'd have an annual, institutional campaign, but the person who really made the difference was a spouse of one of the doctors. And because, docs are, they've spent a fortune to get there and they don't want to give a fortune away. And so they were tough on that. But the spouse is the one that made it do it. Says, we're all, because she'd get all those other, and
Guess who
I
paid
know
the
it's a
bill?
male
And who
female
was
type
that?
deal, but but we got her up board and she became a real team player. It was amazing.
Well, one of the driving reasons that we're sponsoring this series is the truth is that I'm carrying fearless community and business leaders who, were fearless in everything in their lives except asking for gifts, and Mike and Richard will tell you it's not all that difficult. You present a story, a case, and you're going to get to a line of would you consider a gift of, and you fill in a specific amount, and then you put in a specific purpose. You never leave it open-ended. And we like to say, unlike probably the rest of the organization, you're not in the fundraising business unless you have the chops for asking. And Richard and Mike, let's go in that order.
Yes. So even in your letters and your communications, you have to be upfront and direct. The ask them out, what for needs to be in the first paragraph, and type of thing. So it's very important. But you got to do your homework first. The amount's got to be, it has to be the right person for the right thing at the right amount at the right time. So
Mike?
Yeah, one of my Gonzer, Gerber, Tinker, and Stir were the first consultants that I ever had out of Chicago.
I know them. I had them too.
What?
I had them too, but go ahead.
But and those guys, they built Northwestern University and a lot of hospitals, but their whole deal was, you're a friends builder first, and you do that, with all the publics that you're going to meet. You build the friends, and then and everything evolves. We forget about evolution. All this stuff evolves if it's done correctly.
Yeah. I always felt my last job was an executive director of a foundation, but, I think, my core purpose was to ask for the major gifts, that my week was empty if I didn't ask for a gift. I really felt that's what you did a lot of other things, some of them you liked and some you didn't, but I thought you lived for the ask. And I had another thinking. I always liked to take my director of development. It was a great way to mentor and train staff. There was nothing like seeing a good ask. Of course, that's assuming I could make a good ask. But we talked about what you do with your CO and the big donor. I guess it wasn't can't stand should be. Richard, you said you had hate. That's a pretty strong word. What is CEO? I'll start with Mike. What does CEO, CDO, Chief Development Office synergy look like?
Well, you have to have confidence in each other. I mean, if it's not there, it doesn't work. I mean, whoever the president is has to be assured that you're going to take care of him or her. And my very first experience was with when I worked for Incarnate Word College, and
I didn't know that.
Sister Margaret Patrice was the president, and and then I'd take her out. We'd go to Houston and do all the foundations in Houston, and she would be she wasn't quite sure about it, but when she first got that $500,000 check, I mean, Katie barred the door.
No, I mean, there's nothing like knocking the opponent down.
I know it.
Richard, what's your perspective on that synergy?
Well, so you got to get so the CEO likes fundraising, so you have to create it for success for them. So a couple incidents, I would have the relationship with the donor. They have agreed to make the gift, and I said, okay, can I bring the president to ask you for the gift?
Yeah.
And I would say, I'm training the president. Okay. And they would say, sure, that's good. And president would come, ask for the gift, person would say yes. And then later the president would be bragging about what a great fundraiser he or she was. But they're enthusiastic about the next ask.
That's right.
Yep.
So you got to make them be successful at it, even if you have to lead them to the water and everything else. But then they'll find the water on their own.
I'm going to pick on my former colleague, Richard, this time. He taught me the concept of low-hanging fruit. And can you share it with our audience?
Sure. Those are the people that you're already engaged with. They already love the institution. They've already given money, and the timing is right to ask them again for a gift.
Richard, I don't know what's happening over time, if the low-hanging fruit's moving up higher or we're getting shorter. But and we're moving to our wrap up. We got about 3 minutes left. Michael, do we have any questions? I feel like we have not brought the audience in. Do we have any questions or comments?
So we've got a few comments.
Okay.
This is from Dennis. He said, sometimes the CEO and other higher ups do not believe that they must follow institutional policies. And often the head of HR agrees that they have freedom to violate policy with impunity, even when the policy is supposed to be followed by all employees. When my mom gave $20,000 to create an endowment scholarship for fine arts majors, Jim asked if she would consider giving an additional $2,500 so that the scholarship could be awarded immediately. That's from a few minutes ago.
Thank you. Thank you. Where I come from, we call that chutzpah. But we're wrapping up here, and something we hear all the time is computer screen fatigue. Barbara, how are you coaching executives? And then I want Richard and Mike to chime in, because I think we're all suffering from this.
Have 10 minutes between each meeting to get up and stand up. That's part of it. The other is to be aware of what happens with your team members when they have when they're on the computer too much. So asking them how they're doing, for sure.
Yeah, I like that. Richard?
So the trade-off is that you don't have to travel, right? Yeah. And so the spending more time in front of the screen, I think, is a good trade-off. Or you're not going to meet with people at all. So I belong on several boards, and we always have Zoom meetings and so forth. I've taken courses, musicmanship courses, stuff like that. And it would not be possible without doing it online. So, and one class was in California. I could not attend that class, right? The rest of now the whole world's open to me. So that's the benefit of it. And that's the benefit we gotta appreciate.
Yeah, that's right. This is my close-up. I like to say our job in fundraising, you hear about the word relationship, is really to build friendship. You know how I define a relationship? Relationship's something you have until something better comes along. And so we want to keep a donor over time. I'm going to wrap up here. This is my hero. Trivia question: who is the only person in history to recite a poem at the inauguration, then at the Super Bowl? And of course, that's Amanda Gorman. And I think she captured the spirit. The name of her poem is The Hill We Climb. And I think really in the nonprofit sector, that describes, what we're all about. And I leave with a money back guarantee, okay, from me and from Barbara Greene and from Richard Ortega. That's tough to say. And Mike Davis. The more that you ask, the more you're going to give. I want to thank. This has been really, the hour just flew by, and this was a trifecta. I couldn't think of three more better suited people. It was such an interactive and rich conversation. Thank you, Barbara Greene. Thank you, Richard Ortega, and thank you, Mike Davis.
You're welcome.
And we want to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day. Remember, I'm from Boston, so it's in my blood. Boy, I've seen some St. Patrick's Day. And Michael Argent, our plan is we're going to put a short summary of this on LinkedIn and Facebook, and then Michael Argent does a spin drive and edits the recording, and then we're going to put that on LinkedIn and Facebook too. So I want to thank everyone. We're going to see you next week with another Davis family member, Josh Davis, who won 5 Olympic medals. And he's really but he's a better person than he is athlete. So everyone stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.